Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here in the House of Industry. This is a house of lots of tradition, but it's a place of dynamism as well. So I think it's the right place to welcome the Drucker Forum here. It's for sure not easy to explain what complexity is all about in just 5 to 10 minutes, but that's what I was asked to do. I fully agree with Mr. Schraub that there are no recipes anyway, because each manager, each leader has to deal with complexity the way he wants to deal, but I think there are some basics to be observed. I think today's world, from my perspective, has changed from the past dramatically because of 4 causes. First, it's networks. The second one is dynamism/speed. The third one is convergence, and the fourth one, of course, is complexity. Whereby the first 3 are driving complexity. One could think that convergence would reduce complexity, but it's the other way around. A converging world means that much more is located within a tiny little thing. And that's the problem of complexity. Of course, this applies for the economy and for social processes. It does not apply for this change, does not apply for biosystems, because that's where we ever and always had the complexity. As far as the economy is concerned, there would exist very, very little complexity without networks and without globalization. And that's what I'm convinced about. And this prerequisite we have to consider when talking about and considering the issue of complexity. Simply because one needs to understand how networks are organized, how networks appear, and what networks are all about. If one does not understand that, it's very, very difficult to understand and to deal with complexity. But let's talk about complexity as such. Complexity sometimes appears as an opportunity and an advantage. Sometimes it appears as a threat or a disadvantage. Consequently, one has to understand complexity and one has to manage complexity properly. Even if we have to admit that there are certain situations where you can't manage complexity anymore. So, but I think we have to distinguish 2 different kinds of complexity. There is the external complexity of the world, and there is the internal complexity of the organization. And the more complex the world gets, the simpler you should organize your organization. That's what I think one has to do. And why do we have to distinguish them? They have different drivers and they need different approaches. And this applies for enterprises as well as for political economies. Complexity is the core element in an economy based on cyberspace on the one hand side and international division of labor on the other side. Cyberspace is caused by networks and itself causes the increase of dynamism and the increase of speed. And by the way, I did not want to mention that, but due to the fact that Mr. Lüfkens had mentioned twittering and emailing in this room, I think one of the core problems of complexity is awareness. And one of the solutions of complexity would be also awareness. And twittering during sessions takes a lot of awareness away. So, my origin is IT, telecommunications, and nevertheless I'm addressing this issue in this way. So, on the other hand, the International Division of Labor means specialization, means high volumes, and means economies of scale. And both the cyberspace and the international division of labor fosters productivity and supports the creation of prosperity in our society. But both also drive external and internal complexity. Anyway, there exist other drivers beside these main drivers as well. Diversity is, of course, one driver. Volatility of today's world is a driver of complexity. Because hardly anything is predictable, and governance and compliance is making our organizations much more complex and over-complex, more complex than they need to be. And it's, of course, the responsibility towards the society, which was not really dealt with some decades ago. But the question is how to cope with complexity. I think first is one needs to recognize and to understand a complex system and a complex situation. And this, from my perspective, requires more soft skills than hard skills. So I think we need much more of an open mind. We have to, our preconceived notions have to vanish. Beneath the visible event, there exists an underlying structure and underlying mental models we don't really recognize by looking at the situation briefly. So we have to go far beyond what we are doing today. And we need to shift from experience more to awareness and to attention, and we have to transform the quality of our awareness dramatically. And we have to expand our thinking from the brain, means from the head, from the brain to the heart. I think that could put us into a position to understand the entire grid and to understand complexity. Now, how to manage it? I'm convinced that it has to be managed in teams. You can't manage complexity as a single individual. This is not possible. I think as far as organizations are concerned, managing complexity requires a project-oriented organization instead of a line organization. It's transparency, and we have to avoid rigid structures, and we need a high degree of trust. Then we are able to delegate, to cut the entire value chain in pieces. But what we have to be aware is that we have to look at it like a kind of hologram, and we have to look at it that each part of the work packages contains more or less the entire information of the entire value chain. So everything is understood, and ending up with two examples, just one from the enterprise sector and one from the political sphere. As far as the enterprise sector is concerned, it's about monitoring and managing competitive frameworks. Competitive frameworks are getting much more complex, and competition is raised from different branches. It was in the past, well, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was pretty easy to predict where competition is coming from. In today's world, you have to be very, very well aware and cautious where your future competition is really coming from. Secondly, politics, well, because it's an actual issue today in Austria's negotiation about a new concerning a new government. I think managing public budgets in uncertain circumstances would be an easy task if politics and politicians would really be prepared to understand where the problems are all about and not just discussing the amount of money which is missing. So it's not about the current situation, it's about the targets we want to achieve. So I really wish you a pleasant day, a very interesting day, and I got it? Or did the watch stop? Okay, so thank you very much and have a nice day and feel well in these traditional rooms. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.